file submission process. We will review file uploads, view submission, and submission statuses. Okay, here we have the CALPADS home screen. Once you log into CALPADS, this is what you'll be greeted with. To upload a file, you go to Upload, View, Submission in this left navigation here. You have two choices, File Upload and View Submission. So to submit a file, we're going to select File Upload. So looking at the File Upload screen, you can see that we have the file type. There's a drop-down list. So the file type must match the record type in the file. So if you're submitting enrollment records, you have to find the SSID enrollment file. If you're going to submit student programs, you have to submit the student program file. You have a job name. Any job that you submit, you have the option to give it a name so that you can identify it later. And then you would select your file. The Choose File button allows you to select your file. You also can submit additional files and upload them at the same time. All right, so let's refresh the screen. We'll start with the single file first, and we'll do a SSID enrollment file or an SENR file. So when you extract data from your student information system, you want to save your files in a location that you can easily refer back to. And for me, I created this folder for the batch file data population for 22-23. So that's, this training that we're doing now. So just created a folder and put my files in. And it's good to save the files for a period of time, just so you're keeping an electronic record of the data submitted to CALPADS. So let's find our SENR file. So there it is. Click Open. Whatever name you find appropriate. And you click Upload File. So you can see that when the file is submitted successfully, you will get a message. If there's a formatting issue, if you select the wrong file type for the file submitted, you'll get a rejected record or you'll get a failed upload message. And you would start over from square one. Okay, so we have this file upload successful message. And this is the test environment, right? So being the test environment, the file went very quickly. Even in production though, even in the regular CALPADS that you log into, since the post redevelopment, files do post very quickly. They process through the initial validations very quickly now. So things should be quite similar to what we're demonstrating. All right, so we can scroll down and we have our results for our submissions, but let's take a look up here on the top half of the screen. We're on the View Submission screen. You can see that you can use these filter selections and then click Apply Filters, and they will impact our results. So if you want to narrow your searches for just enrollment records, you can. You can do all file types, or you can choose any other specific record or file type. Perhaps you're looking for just student information files. So, all right, we'll do enrollment for now. And then you have your different file statuses, which we'll refer back to. But again, if you're just looking for posted records, you'd look for posted. Or if you want to review rejected records, you look for your submissions among those rejected. So that's another filter. If you have an administrator account, you could look for files submitted by other users or yourself. And then the date range, which is maybe the one you'll use most often. CALPADS does have a retention policy with records and the posting, so they're not stored infinitely. That's something to keep in mind. However, if you have submitted a file and you don't see it listed, think about the date you uploaded and perhaps you need to go back further, or in our case, I will narrow the search. And then you see this checkbox, include online submissions. So if you want to track what records were submitted online, that's a way to check. Or if you make a change online and you don't see an instantaneous change, you could come to the View Submission screen to check to see if that record was passed and posted or if it was rejected. So you can see here, I have an online transaction and a rejected record. Those are the filters on the view submission screen. So I'm going to click apply filter. And we have that file that I just submitted, okay? And so immediately, I want to bring your attention to the file status. It says posted. There were 12 records, there were 0 errors, and since there were no errors, the file posted. If there was one rejected record, and I may say this multiple times in this demonstration, if there was one rejected record, the file would be rejected, okay? You can see who submitted the file type, the name that I gave it, the CDS code, right? This is my district code. And then the date and time, which is important when you're trying to compare data submitted to snapshots and whatnot, and then a job ID. So if you were ever trying to search immediately for a batch file submission, you could put the job ID in and search. And it should bring us to this specific job. And so that's the view submission detail screen. And you can see that it brought us to this specific job. Now, in the view submission details, you see a summary here, right? The same information that's on the view submission screen. You can see the job ID, the job name, the file type, the file name, and the submitter. You can see the submitted date and time. You can see the status posted. Now we have the status date and time. So now that the status has updated to posted, we can see it posted at 6:30. It took approximately 1.5 minutes to post. You can see the total of 12 records. Also notice that if there were any errors, we can view those. And we'll talk about that later. For those of you who have been submitting data to CALPADS, we also can see that there is no visibility to our past records. So that's why when I mentioned you want to save your files electronically in your folder, because if you're trying to identify which students should have a posted record, or you're trying to reconcile data in reports and you know that you submitted data for a student, you can't go back in CALPADS and identify past records and tell support, on this date, I submitted an SENR file with this SSID in it, because you can see there's no visibility to past records. So you want to keep that file handy, maybe date it, the folder, or put a date on that file. It's just a suggestion that I provide for you, right? Now we'll go back to the view submission screen, click the back button. All right. So we're back at the view submission screen, and I want to talk about the file statuses. You can see that we're posted. And there are many different file statuses. And so let's go back to the slide deck and look at the different statuses. Okay, so the file submission statuses, right? And these are in sequential order. So if you were to watch a file process and monitor each status, this is what you would see. We begin with created. This tells you that the file was uploaded successfully, but the validations have not yet run. So sometimes you may see a slight pause if the system is inundated with submissions, right? There's always a queue. However, typically you don't see created, but if you were just eyeing it like an eagle, it would start with created. Then a possible status is failed. After created, if you don't pass the first set of validations, those are specific to formatting, structure, and record type. They don't look at the data at all, right? Just looking at the structure of the file. If you use the wrong format, if you have the wrong character, possibly, you'll get a upload fail or a failed message. The failed status indicates that the file upload was not successful. The system did not receive the file. The user needs to reformat the file. If you need help, reach out to customer service, which is the CALPADS support desk. That's where the job ID may come into place. You don't even have a job ID with the upload fail. A lot of times you'd have to send us the file through a secured method so we can look at the structure of the file itself and assist you. If the file does not fail immediately, if there's no formatting or structural reasons the file's rejected or fails, you will go to standardizing. Simply put, standardizing is the process of converting the batch file into a format that CALPADS can process further. Once the file is standardized, you can see that it's converted. Then it will go to staging. The file is now going to the staging database to be subjected to input validation rules. Once the file is staged, that's the next status, stage. That means the file has been processed in the staging database. Once a file posts, the staging database is purged. Keep that in mind. Once the file is posted, that data in the staging database is purged. So following staged is validating. This is a file status that you will see sometimes. Validating means that the data within the file is being validated or checked through the input validation rules process. Once the validating process concludes, it will say validated. The file has been processed, and the user can either review errors or look at those records in CALPADS, because the final two alternative statuses are posted or rejected. So after posting, either the result is going to be 100% pass records and that file will be posted, or if there's a single failed record, that file will be rejected. So let's look at posted. Records are posted, the data has passed all input validations, and the records are committed to the database. Alternatively, if you have a failed or rejected record, that file will be rejected. The file uploaded successfully but triggered full rejection when the file input validations were executed. The file input validation errors should be resolved before the data is resubmitted. So again, with a rejected file, CALPADS gives you no receipts. It gives you no output, right? You have to go back to your student information system, make corrections, and resubmit a file. Okay? Once data is submitted to CALPADS, it is that data in that file format is not retrievable. It is not accessible in the format that you uploaded, whether it posts or is rejected. So enough of the statuses. Hopefully that was clear, but we'll reiterate by coming back to the view submission screen. And you can see here are all the statuses, right? We didn't talk about archived. When I said that there's a retention policy, files can be archived after a period of time. So I'm going to broaden my search, and let's see if we can find a greater variety of statuses to look at. Okay, so here you can see we've posted the file we just submitted, posted past records, and my previous submission posted as well, right? You can see that I have online transactions that were rejected, and you can see the total records in the file and then how many errors. Then you can see that I submitted the same file here, 2122 CSIS Berkeley training exits, and I had 38 rejected records. And you can see that I had that same submission quite a few times. And then you can see previous to those 38 rejected records, I had 36 total records and 2 errors. So that means of my 36 records, only 2 failed, right? So I had 34 passed records and only 2 failed, but the file was rejected in entirety. Again, you can see archived. So there's a retention policy. CALPADS is not keeping these records forever. So when you're submitting records, try to think about your time. When you're resolving errors or you have posted records, think about what you're going to be doing in the coming days or the coming week to make sure that you can complete a submission process. So you can see more posted and some archived records. And now you can see several archive files, and they're older. If you look at the date, we're back in May now, At the time of this recording, we're in October, so you can see that you see many more archive files the older they are, and now you see nothing but archived records. So if I wanted to look at the rejected records, that wouldn't be available because those are archived, right? So let's shorten my window so we can focus again on the file that was just recently submitted. So 10.8, let's go to okay, so we're back to the file that we just recently uploaded, that enrollment file with 12 posted records, 0 errors. So I just want to reiterate from the view submission screen, if you were to go click the view button, and we're going to go to view submission details, again, you have the status up here. There are no past records. So when a file posts, those records post it into CALPADS automatically, okay? And so the hopefully the video that we're recording now is beneficial, but if you needed more detailed information, the CALPADS user manual is the resource. And you want to go to upload view submission, and you can either get information on the file upload, view submission, or view submission details. And so we looked at each of the 3 screens related to a file upload, from file upload, view submission, and now the view submission details. So we're going to go back to the file upload screen. And so before we move on to demonstrating multiple files, right? What if we wanted to confirm, since there are no past records, how do we confirm what we submitted is in fact in CALPADS? So let me pull up a file and let me walk you through that. Okay, so to confirm that records submitted and posted actually did post in CALPADS, you're going to want to look in the CALPADS. So here I have the file that I submitted. This is my SENR. You can see the record type, and you can see we have Jimbo Jones up here. I'm going to copy this SSID. And before we do that, we can see that we have the student's birth date. We have an enrollment date of 8/22/2022. Our student is in 8th grade, and there's no enrollment date. So we're submitting an enrollment for the 22-23 academic year, and the first day of school is 08/22, right? So let's look up Jimbo Jones just to confirm that the records did post as CALPADS is telling me, right? So I'm going to open a new screen because I want to preserve this in upload page. So we have a second file upload page, and now I can paste in Jimbo's name using the quick search here in the left navigation, or paste in Jimbo's SSID. All right, and so here is the record I expect to see. I see that Jimbo has that 8/22/2022 start date and is in the 8th grade. Last year, Jimbo was in the 7th grade. So that's how you just can confirm that the records you intended to post did in fact post, okay? You don't have to do that, but if you're feeling a little bit insecure, or if you're just wanting confirmation, that's how you would do it. So let me close down that file. And we use Excel templates when we do our demonstrations and thesis. It helps to show you. It is a great visualization tool, but also we don't have student information systems. Okay, so we submitted an SENR file, right? So I don't need to do that again, but I have to update my students' demographic record. So I'm going to submit my student information, and I have to update my student English language acquisition status, possibly for a single student. Let's do program, student program. Here we go. And let's do the CELA file, or the CELA, or the Student English Language Acquisition as well. Why not? So let's find additional file. Student English Language Acquisition. And let's choose the file. Here it is. Okay. Now, we can submit the student information, the student program, and the Student English Language Acquisition file simultaneously because in CALPADS, there are no relationships that these files are dependent on each other. Because we just posted our enrollment records for our students, that the data is in these files, we have ownership, which is a key concept, we can now submit these files. Had we not established our enrollment period through the student enrollment submission first, it is possible that we would get ownership errors. The one you see most often is GERR005. I like to call it the GER5 because you get mad and you're GER. It keeps popping up, right? The GER5 is an error that you will find in most other student records. Anytime you see the GER5, it's dependent on your enrollment information. So we'll cover that later, but we're in a different module. But just know ownership allows you to submit student records, which we're going to do in these file submissions, and ownership is established through your enrollment. So at the beginning of the year, when you're updating your enrollment records, always start with the student enrollment file, then move on to your other student files. But we'll just focus on the student information. And then the additional file will be student program. Okay, so you can see that we're in created. So that's the first status is created. And I'm going to refresh to see if a status will update. You can see it says, well, it did say file upload successful at the top. Now we're in staging. And unfortunately, we're rejected. Okay, so you can see that the submission resulted in rejected records. One file, we had total of 4 records and 3 errors. 4 passed and 3 records triggered an error. Or we had 4 pass records and we generated 3 errors. And then this file, we have 12 errors, no records passed, right? So we have a 0. So the intent isn't to demonstrate resolving rejected records yet. So I did a little bit of work off screen and we're going to redo the process. But I did want to talk about you can expect your file submission process to be iterative, right? You're going to submit files multiple times until you get all passed records and no rejected records. That's the only way you can be sure all the data from your student information system is in CALPADS. If I were to try to minimize my submission and divide it up and submit instead of 12 records, 4 and 3 and 7, you know, I wouldn't be sure that I got them all. So this complete submission like this is confirmation that all 12 of my students are in CALPADS. So we're going to click upload another file and we're going to try again. And while we do that, I did want to remind you, remember we selected the CELA file, the Student English Language Acquisition, and we got that upload fail message. It was the wrong file type. So I'll drag this in front of you and I'll show you what the problem is. So you can see that the record type code here, let me make it a little larger. Is CELA-R. That -R is not a submittable record type. SELA is. So that -R triggered there. So I'm going to save this and close, and I expect to be able to submit all 3 files now successfully. So student information, additional file, student program. Here we go. And one more additional file, student English language acquisition, the SELA file. And that's there. So hopefully no upload fail messages this time. File upload was successful, so that's great. They're all in created. Let's see the result. Now the files are going through the process of input validations. As these files are processing, it is a good time to show you where you see validated. So we didn't see validating, but it did go to staged and to validated. And so we do pause to show you this. So that's an indication that all the records passed. You see there's no errors. And it just takes a little bit of time to get to post it, right? So you can see following validating, all 3 files have posted, right? And so I know all of these records were submitted to CALPADS. Now you may ask, why did I have 12 students that I enrolled and then 12 students that I updated their demographic information, but only 5 programs and 1 student with a English language acquisition status? So, and that's just a little bit deeper into CALPADS. That's a bit outside the scope of this training, but just very briefly, not every student's going to have a program record. So maybe only 5 students had program records, or maybe 4 students had program records and a student had 2, making 5 programs. So not every student has a program. You don't even necessarily need to update all your students' demographic information unless there was a change. And then the SELA, the Student English Language Acquisition, you only need to submit those that have no status or that are changing status. So if a student went from EL to RFEP, okay? So I just did an enrollment update. These were all students that were previously enrolled. So they all had student English language acquisition status. So in this case, only 1 student status changed, right? And so that's why that file has just 1 record. Again, that's a bit outside the scope. We have data population training explaining all of these nuances. But if that question came to mind as you're looking at the results, I just wanted to address that. Okay, so what we didn't cover through the magic of editing was how we resolve these rejected records. And so in the next module, that's what we're going to do. We're going to break down these rejected records and show the methodology of how to resolve them in a batch file. Okay.